In this presentation, we explored the development of a Reborn digital archival edition as a hybrid approach for the collection, organisation and analysis of Reborn digital materials that are accessible through public web archives. Niels Brugger describes Reborn digital media as media that has been collected and preserved and has undergone a change due to this process, such as emulations of computer games or materials in a web archive. We also explored the potential of a Reborn digital archival edition as a method to enable the sharing and reuse of data from public web archives. While we are not as far on in the project as we thought we would be by now, nonetheless we do have some concrete developments which we would like to share with you today. But first, we will take a brief look at some of the challenges in using web archives for research in the first place. In terms of the challenges for researchers using web archives, there are many reasons put forward for this, and we will briefly look at a few. For Niels Brugger, challenges arise due to the characteristics of an archived website or web page, which may not be a complete surrogate of what was once on the live web. Rather, it is a version. Costia identifies a need for improvements to web archives in the areas of discoverability options, data selection, data management, and access to more comprehensive documentation and metadata. Researchers have challenges due to ethical, socio-technical, and political circumstances. Legislation on copyright and legal deposit also presents challenges for researchers to utilise web archives. There are challenges due to a lack of technical knowledge in the application of data mining techniques to vast volumes of data, as well as a lack of training and experience in using web archives. Traditional researchers may want to take a more qualitative approach towards using the archived web, but they too have challenges due to a lack of research methods and theoretical paradigms for the use of the archived web. So in terms of what we are trying to do, the broad aim is to look at how we can progress from the creation of web archives to developing research methods and approaches for the use of the archived web. And from there we wanted to focus on something that was a little bit more specific and see what we could come up with. So we are taking an approach for non-programmers, and we ask, how can non-programmers develop a corpus of archived web pages for critical study? Can we develop a model in line with the JISC research data management lifecycle? Can we develop a model using free and open source software and tools? And can we develop a repeatable model? In developing this archival edition, we use a case study of the press media statements of Irish politician, poet and sociologist Michael D. Higgins from 2002 to 2011. These press statements were once available on the website of Higgins, who is the current serving Irish president since 2011. Higgins' website disappeared from the live web sometime after the 2011 presidential election took place on the 27th of October, and sometime before Higgins was inaugurated on the 11th of November 2011. The URL has since then redirected to the website of the President of Ireland. Although a new version of Higgins' website with the same URL made a reappearance before the next presidential election in 2018, to which Higgins was elected again, and afterward the website URL redirected to the President of Ireland site once again. Using the National Library of Ireland's NLI Web Archive and the Internet Archive's Wayback Machine, which are both publicly accessible on the web, we plan to find and collect traces of Michael D. Higgins' press media statements and bring them together as a Reborn digital archival edition. In doing so, we are using Zotero, free and open source software for collecting, organising and analysing the archived web pages. We extract the text of the press media statements and we use free screenshot software to capture a screenshot of the archived web page. Then we plan to use Omeka, another free and open source software, as a platform for presenting the data in terms of the screenshots, metadata and transcriptions as a curated thematic collection of Reborn digital materials. We will use Droid open source software for organising the data for long-term preservation and Open Science Framework as a platform for sharing derivative materials and datasets. So to briefly discuss where the data is coming from, the NLI commenced a Born Digital programme in 2011, and as part of this they teamed up with the Internet Memory Foundation's subscription-based web archiving service for a selective permissions-based web archiving initiative for the 2011 general election, and later the same year web content was collected for the 2011 Irish presidential election. When the IMF ceased operations in 2018, the NLI migrated to the Archival web archiving platform, and it is this resource that we use for the basis of our collection. And we use one of those early collections, being the 2011 Irish presidential election, which is currently accessible on the NLI Archival platform. From that, we identified approximately 430 press statements dating from 2004 to 2011. In this slide, we show an example of one of the press media statements in the NLI Web Archive that was archived in 2011, but it was actually issued in 2004. And as you can see, Mr. Higgins was not too happy with George Bush's war. And of course, we all know about the staggering efforts of the Internet Archive and the value of the Wayback Machine for researchers from countries that did not have a web archiving programme in the 1990s and 2000s. This slide shows how Higgins' homepage was captured as far back as March 2002, although that does not necessarily mean that there will be any captures of press statements, which tend to be deeper threads within a website itself. But thankfully, there are quite a few. And as we can see, the setup of the press statements on Higgins' website in 2002 provides a static list on its statements webpage, which is convenient. And there are 34 captures of these statement pages. So we can follow the links then to find captures of a press statement webpage within an archived copy of the index of statements page and collect it using Zotero. Although sometimes the link to the actual content of the statement itself was not captured. So it is a matter of luck that there were any captures at all. We can also use the Digital Methods Initiative Wayback Link Ripper to extract all the links from an archived copy of a statements web page and remove all the duplicate URLs and develop a list to follow and see if there were any captures. We are currently finishing off this process, and to date we have collected more than 30 press statements from the Wayback, which were issued in 2002 and 2003. And here we have a press statement which was issued in February 2002 and was captured in the Wayback in August 2002. And we see here indications of the efforts of Michael D. Higgins for the protection of the Irish language, for which he was dedicated to throughout his political life. And now I'm going to hand you over to Dr. Juan-José Boté from the University of Barcelona to talk a little bit about our methodology.
Thanks, Sharon. Then, for collecting and capturing of the data for our archival edition, we use free screenshot tools and Zotero free and open source software. In terms of capturing a screenshot of the archived web page, we use Go Full Page, free version, mainly because it is relatively easy to use for our purpose, for example, a non-programmer. But there are many other free tools out there for non-programmers to use, such as Strike, Greenshot, Scissors Windows, etc. As mentioned, we use Zotero to collect the data from the public web archive. Zotero is a free, open-source research tool that helps you collect, organize, and analyze research and share it in a variety of ways. It includes the ability to store author, title, and publication fields and to export that information as formatted references or other exporters such as CSV and JSON. Zotero was created by the Center for History and New Media at George Mason University, with its first release in 2006. In 2021, its development was taken over by the non-profit Corporation for Digital Scholarship. so it's been around for some time and has a strong community of users. The Zotero Connector browser extension enables us to collect the data straight from the browser of the archived webpage, and it interacts with online resources. When it senses you are viewing a book, article, or other object on the web, it can automatically extract and save complete bibliographic references. In this slide, you will see an archived web page in the Wayback Machine and Zotero Connector in the browser, just on the top of the right screen. Zotero also allows us to collaborate and analyze the data through the ability to organize, tag, and search in different ways. It allows for collaboration in generating things like literature reviews, qualitative data, analysis with annotation tools, such for highlighting text and adding comments. And here we have an example of collecting some of these press statements from the Wayback Machine, and you will notice the connector was able to scrape minimal data in comparison to what it could usually collect if it were scraping for a journal article or an item in a library, for example. It is a similar story when collecting archived web pages from the NLI Web Archive. For the most part, and for this particular website collection, Zotero scribes a title field, the URL, and the Wayback timestamp, for example, the date of the capture. But also the Zotero fields for a web page resource also lack some depth to what we would need for providing metadata for an archival source in a web archive. So we need more granular metadata fields, and we also need to create metadata. And for a researcher starting out with web archives, that may seem like a tall order. While Zotero opts to recognize archived web pages as a web page, we have opted to apply the document type to the record, as it provides us with much of the necessary metadata fields to enable us to provide as much information as possible about the archived web source. In this slide, you will see we have the basis for our collection underway, from up to 400 sources collected in the NLI Web Archive. We have added metadata for things like the author, the publisher, library catalog, where the resource resides in the NLI catalog, and the call number and the link to the item recorded in NLI catalog. In the rights field, we have opted to provide as much information as we can think of providing for now, including the fact that the original website indicates it has a Creative Commons license, CC by NC&D, attribution, non-commercial, and non-derivatives. We have also input text in the abstract field, as you may see in the arrow on the right. And this is merely a copy and paste of the text in the body of the press statement. From the press statement itself, we can establish entries for other metadata fields, like the title field and the date of the creation or when it was issued. Zotero also gives us the ability to add subject tags, as you may see on the slide on the right side. In this instance, we are guided by subjects from a controlled vocabulary, such as the Library of Congress subject headings at name authority files. However, adding subjects to make the individual resources more findable with keywords topics. For this, then, we will be collaborating with another project, and I will hand you over to Helena Byrne from the British Library, who will tell us a little bit more about this.
Thank you, Juan-José. My name is Helena Byrne and I'm the Curator of Web Archives at the British Library. In this section, I will give a brief description of the collaborative project I am working on with Emily Mora from the University of Illinois to describe a web archive collection as data. Significant work in web archive scholarship focuses on the description and provenance of collections and their data. Looking beyond the worlds of libraries, archives, and cultural heritage can provide valuable alternative approaches, which we can experiment with and use. Data sheets for datasets is a method for describing large datasets from the field of machine learning, which uses a standard set of questions arranged by stages of the data lifecycle. Emily and I have organised a series of workshops to explore how Web Archive's collections can be described using the Data Sheets for Datasets framework, using the UK Web Archive as an example. So some of you attending the IIPC conference in person may have already signed up for the workshop we are running at the conference. So this will give you an overview of what to expect. There are 31 questions broken down into 9 categories in this framework. However, not all of the questions will be applicable or practical to implement in practice. All the questions have been printed individually, and participants sort the questions using the Moscow Project Management Requirements method. This is M for must have, S should have, C could have, W won't have this time, which means that although it doesn't reach the acceptance criteria this time, there might be a review at a future date where some questions in this category move to another. Participants then reflect on questions that would help describe Web Archive collections that are missing from this framework, because as we said previously, that this is for describing machine learning data sets, and there might be some things unique to web archiving that are missing from this framework. We will share our initial findings at RESA 2023 in June. I'll now pass you over to Sharon.
Thanks for that, Helena. So once we get a handle on finishing the metadata in Zotero, we will export a CSV file from Zotero and cross-map it to Dublin Core metadata, so we can use the CSV import plugin for Omeka Classic software. We can then upload the screenshots of the archive web pages to Omeka in line with the metadata of each source. However, we will also need to develop some additional fields other than the default Dublin Core metadata provided by Omeka for fields like library catalogue and call number. We are also experimenting with doing a direct export of the metadata from Zotero to Omeka using RSS, but we need to be mindful that we are trying to develop a model for non-programmers and people who may have limited technical abilities, so we will see how it works out. As mentioned, we are using Omeka Classic, which is a free and open source content management system for online digital collections. Similar to Zotero, it was created by the Centre for History and New Media at George Mason University, with its first release then in 2008. Its development was taken over by the non-profit Corporation for Digital Scholarship in 2016, and again, like Zotero, it's been around for some time and has a strong community of users. So we can use Omeka as a platform to share and publish our data as a collection with a transcription of the press statement, a screenshot for each archive web page, and metadata for each source. Along with publishing the archival edition in Omeka, we will also be using Droid open source software for organising the data for long-term preservation, and Open Science Framework as a platform for sharing derivative materials and data sets such as text files, screenshots, metadata, and paradata, which will provide the context of our methodology for developing the derivatives and data sets so that the model may be repeatable. Thanks everyone for listening, and we look forward to your questions.